The Palm of the World, genre, ancient swordplay. Author, unknown. After listening, please comment on your feelings, and don't forget to subscribe to listen to the latest episode. Volume 2, Chapter 6. Silver Cold appears. Under the scorching summer sun, it's hard for pedestrians to bear it. On the official path leading to Lu Duong, a young man wearing a white Ao Dai and riding a white horse leisurely walked forward. His appearance is handsome, long black eyebrows, eyes as bright as stars, the true demeanor of a young gentleman. In the midst of the scorching sun, he was still leisurely, holding the reins with both hands, without a whip to spur his horse, quietly reciting Lai Box Tuong Tien Tu. After soaking, he muttered, "Coming soon to Lu Duong." Suddenly, the sound of horse hooves was heard from behind. Kim Fai was startled and thought to himself, could it be that the enemy has followed us here? However, he still sat neatly on the saddle and continued leisurely, looking around at the same time. Not far along the road there is a small forest with dense trees, very suitable for travelers to stop and avoid the heat. He immediately urged his horse to enter there. Arriving there, Kim Fai dismounted, leaving the white horse to graze leisurely, while he walked to the base of an ancient tree to rest. At that moment, a red horse rushed forward and stopped right in front of him. On horseback was a beautiful young woman, wearing a crimson coat, skin as white as jade, and rosy cheeks. Kim Fai smiled, his gentle eyes looked at her as if to ask her intentions. The young girl also looked back, their eyes met, her body trembled slightly as if she had been electrocuted. A look of shame appeared on his cold face, like a smile but also like admiration, but in the blink of an eye it was gone. She returned to her icy appearance and spoke in a sharp voice. "Is he Dang Kim Fai, the person known to the gangsters as Kim Huck Than Kim?" Kim Fai maintained a leisurely demeanor, smiled and asked again, "What is the noble lady's name?" "I'm in a hurry to find this subordinate, but is there any advice?" The young girl was still cold, her voice full of arrogance. "Who is your master?" Kim Fai frowned slightly. This one and the young lady have not met each other yet. As soon as they met, they asked to come to the master. "Isn't that too sudden?" The young girl snorted coldly. "That demon." "You don't say anything, this lady already knows your teacher." Kim Fai frowned, his voice unhappy. Why was the lady so vicious as soon as she opened her mouth? "Although I am incompetent, I am not a demon." Before he finished speaking, the girl in red shouted loudly, "On your person, in addition to the Golden Su Divine Sword, are you also carrying a copy of Phantom Tien Guen Fo?" When Kim Fai heard that, he was extremely surprised and thought to himself, how strange. "How do you know I have the Phantom Tien Fist Spectrum?" On the surface, he still smiled. What does the lady mean by asking like that? The young girl shouted, "Quickly answer." Kim Fai's face turned serious. "Miss, I have urgent business to attend to. I cannot continue the conversation here." Having finished speaking, he turned and walked towards the horse. Suddenly, the girl shouted, "Stop!" Anger rose in Kim Fai's heart, but he did not want to lose his temper with a beautiful young woman. He stopped and said in a low voice, "I don't want to cause trouble. I hope the lady doesn't take too much." The young girl smiled coldly. "If you know what to do, immediately hand over the divine sword and authority to this lady. So, today I temporarily spare your life." Kim Fai smiled faintly, clasped his hands and said, "I'm sorry ma'am, I can't stay and talk anymore." Having finished speaking, he jumped onto the back of a white horse. The red-shirted girl saw this and shouted loudly, "Little thief! Don't try to escape." She shouted and threw herself 3 feet higher. Her 2 jade hands fell directly on Kim Fai's head. He was already on guard, immediately raised his left palm to block the attack. His right palm drew a circle and then struck back. The 2 blasts collided, emitting a resounding bang sound. Kim Fai's blood and energy trembled, his eyes flashed, his body staggered back a few steps before standing steady. The girl in red was also pushed back 3 steps, but quickly stabilized her body. She smiled coldly and continued to swing her palm forward. Kim Fai stood firmly, unable to help but be frightened by the opponent's profound strength. He took a deep breath, let Long Feng's energy circulate throughout his body, and thought to himself, if my internal strength cannot defeat her, then what can I say about avenging my blood hatred? As soon as the thought ended, the red shadow flashed forward, and the wind struck. Kim Fai gritted his teeth, gathered 80% of Long Feng's energy, lowered his attack. His two palms simultaneously struck out to welcome him. Just heard a loud explosion, branches and leaves flying around, dust and sand everywhere. Kim Fai's face turned red, her feet sank more than 2 inches into the ground. The young girl in red let out a soft cry, her clothes fluttered, her body was thrown 8 meters away before gently landing. She raised her hand to smooth her tangled hair, took a deep breath to calm her blood, and then shouted, "Go into the forest to fight again. Today is a matter of life and death." Having finished speaking, she did not wait for Kim Fai to respond. Her body was as light as a bird, rushing straight into the deep forest. Kim Fai had also suffered a strong shock just now. His face was red, his heart was beating rapidly, and his throat curled up as if he wanted to vomit. He quickly swallowed his saliva, stomped his feet, and immediately followed. In the forest there is an open field where reeds grow too high. As soon as the young girl arrived, her face was still as cold as ice, and she shouted, "Little thief! Today, this lady must see how much bravery you have." Being scolded repeatedly, Kim Fai could not bear it and shouted back, "The lady should be a little more reasonable. In the past, I and this lady have never had any resentment or enmity. I have never even heard of this noble lady's name. So why did you open your mouth to scold me like that?" The girl in red snorted coldly, "Huh! Her name is Van Sun Phi Fung Nan Fach Ham Lai Hong. Surely you've heard this title mentioned before?" Although Kim Fai had never heard of it, he suddenly remembered a famous hermit who had become famous decades ago and asked, "I wonder how Miss Lai addresses Van Sun then and I." Lai Hong replied solemnly, "A tutor's reputation is not something someone like you can casually call him. Today, if you do not hand over the divine sword and power, this girl will definitely kill you on the spot." Being forced to the end, Kim Fai smiled faintly. "Whatever you want, my lady, I beg you. It's not difficult to get the divine sword and power, you just need to kill me first." Lai Hong was originally a young expert emerging in the world, and with his beautiful appearance, he had an extremely arrogant personality. Hearing Kim Fai's words, she smiled coldly. "So today, this lady will destroy you first, then consider the next." As she finished speaking, her legs moved slightly, her body was as fast as electricity, and a palm hit Kim Fai straight in the chest. While rushing up, her heart felt a hint of pity, silently thinking, "Dang, Kim Fai is truly talented. If he wasn't an enemy of the sect, it would be great. Waiting to see how he attacks later, we will know whether it is the opponent's subordinate or not." Seeing her being so stubborn, Kim Fai became even angrier and thought to herself, "This girl is beautiful, but she's too arrogant and dares to steal my things. Huh! Female tyrant, today I have to teach you a lesson." Lai Hong took action. Kim Fai was not polite. He immediately used Long Feng's energy to protect his body, and his left hand reached out to grab her wrist. Lai Hong quickly withdrew his hand, his right hand grabbed the weak point in Kim Fai's left shoulder, and at the same time raised his knee and pushed hard into the opponent's dantian. Kim Fai smiled faintly, 2 fingers quickly touched the Lao Kung acupuncture point in her palm. Lai Hong was forced to withdraw his hand and take a step back. Suddenly, she shouted loudly and rushed forward to attack again. Kim Fai quickly deployed Long Feng Song Tuet Guen to welcome him. In just a blink of an eye, he continuously unleashed 4 palms, 3 punches, and 5 kicks. The two fought fiercely, the surrounding branches and leaves fell like rain. Suddenly there was a boom sound, Kim Fai missed a blow and hit the ground immediately caved in, sand and dust flew everywhere. But the fierce battle was not interrupted. After more than 100 rounds, Kim Fai gradually became impatient. The more he fought, the more he felt that the opponent's strength was unpredictable. Lai Hong also realized that Kim Fai's martial arts skills were almost similar to his own, and his internal strength was not inferior. Every time she made a move, the opponent already guessed the next move, either changed the move to break the solution or counterattacked, forcing her to withdraw and save herself. Many times she fell into a helpless situation, making it difficult to continue. She understood clearly that if she kept fighting like this, sooner or later she would only fail, and she absolutely could not win. A few times, when the attack put King Fai in a vulnerable position, Lai Hong suddenly stopped, unable to bear the fatal blow, thanks to which he was able to escape danger. Even she didn't understand why she was so soft-hearted. In fact, unconsciously, she had fallen in love with King Fai without even knowing it. King Fai was the same. Every time he was about to kill an assassin, he thought to himself, "It would be a shame for such a beautiful lady to die at my hands." The two continued arguing endlessly until the sun turned west. Suddenly there was a loud boom sound. The wind rolled up like a storm, knocking down several large trees, forcing both of them to retreat to the sides. King Fai staggered back 3 steps before standing firmly, his throat constricted, and he suddenly spit out a mouthful of fresh blood. Lai Hong was frightened, rushed forward and blurted out, "You!" King Fai rolled his eyes and shouted, "Stop!" Lai Hong indeed stopped, not daring to come closer, but his eyes were full of worry. As soon as the scream ended, King Fai spat out another mouthful of blood, gasped for a few breaths, and said, "If you want to get the divine sword and the power, just come and get it. This is the most convenient time. Otherwise, when my strength recovers, you will have to fight for a long time before you can hurt me like this." He spoke in a rapid breath, his eyes gradually losing color. On the contrary, Lai Hong stood still and looked at him, his face full of concern. As soon as King Fai spoke, his blood and energy swirled violently. Lai Hong didn't understand why he was so different today. Normally, towards her enemies, she acts cruelly and without hesitation. That's why, in addition to the title Van Sun Phi Fong, gypsies also assigned the 3 words Non Fach Han. Many people who call themselves knights, whenever they meet her, are terrified and beg for their lives. There is no shortage of handsome men, but she has never had a crush on anyone. Yet now, the person in front of her was the disciple of the enemy who destroyed the master. Master once gave a strict order: whenever you meet someone from the other side, kill them immediately, absolutely do not show mercy. But at this moment, even though she had seriously injured King Fai, she still hesitated, unable to bear it. If we don't take advantage of this moment to kill him, how can we get the divine sword and universal power to bring him back to serve his destiny? Otherwise, what's the point of traveling thousands of miles to this foreign gate? Thinking so, Lai Hong kept glancing at King Fai. He sat solemnly under a tree, on the grass, quietly doing his healing work. The more she looked, the more she saw that his appearance was indescribably handsome. Lai Hong quietly took 2 steps closer and then stopped. Her hand slightly raised, but how could she reach into his body to steal the magic sword and rights? Just thinking about disturbing him while he was doing his work made her feel uneasy, let alone trying to rob him. Finally, she sighed softly and muttered, "Oh Lai Hong, you fell in love with someone, and that person is an enemy of your master." She slowly walked out of the forest, led the white horse tied under the tree, intending to leave. But suddenly she stopped. He is using his energy and absolutely cannot be disturbed by outside forces. If an enemy appeared at this time, wouldn't he be in danger? Thinking so, she turned around, hid herself in the bushes, silently protecting him. Standing guard in the forest, her heart was torn endlessly. Her mission forced her to kill King Fai, so she tried not to look at him, just hoping to leave this place quickly. But she couldn't bear to leave. Even if the situation allows, she cannot leave now. In that contradiction, time quietly passed. The sun has disappeared to the west, the new moon gradually rises to the east. Suddenly, a human voice rang out in the forest. "Main Hall, this is the place." Lai Hong immediately tensed up and looked out intently. A hoarse voice asked, "Farmer Fuang, you're not mistaken, are you?" "Hall master, with my own eyes, a servant saw a boy fighting a girl here." "Yes, then what?" "After that, They both went into the forest. What? Going into the forest together? Right. The girl wearing a red shirt seems to be Van Sun Phi Fong. Oh, are they the same people? Are not. Before that, they had a fierce fight around here. Lai Hong listened carefully and soon heard footsteps entering the forest. She glanced at Kim Phi, knowing that this moment was extremely dangerous. Sweat was pouring down his forehead like rain, and his pale face was gradually turning pink again. A feeling of regret suddenly arose in her heart, and she thought to herself, all of this is because I hurt you. She determined to protect Kim Phi. At this time, she loved him, even though she still tried to lie to herself. Lai Hong continued to listen and scout the enemy's direction. The sound got closer and closer. It was clear that the enemy had entered deeper into the forest. She gritted her teeth, jumped onto a high tree branch, her eyes fixed on the direction of the sound, ready to fight. Chapter 7. Facing the Great Enemy. Suddenly, a tall, thin old man, with a goatee chin, hawk eyes, a hooked nose like a blackbird's beak, and a neat black robe, quickly passed under the tree branch where she was hiding. His direction went straight towards Kim Phi, who was sitting and healing his wounds. Immediately realizing the other person's identity, Lai Hong silently cursed. Sure enough, the Thiat Hong gang dispatched the whole company to Hak Lin. Even Du Kich, the master of the hall, personally went to the foreign officials. Without having time to think further, if the Black Spirit Hall master were to take a few more steps, Kim Phi, who had no ability to resist at this point, would definitely be discovered. Lai Hong immediately shouted, "Stop! The old man in black is certainly not ordinary." As soon as he heard the shout, he immediately turned around, glared at Lai Hong standing on the tree, smiled and asked, "Could it be that the female hero is the famous wanderer Van Sun Phi Fung Nan Fach Han?" Lai Hong, like a red flame, gently landed on the ground. He smiled and replied, "Don't dare, don't dare. May I ask who is your honor?" The Black Spirit Hall master smiled faintly. "The old man is just an anonymous pawn, currently in charge of the Black Spirit Hall of the Thiat Hong gang." Lai Hong pretended to be frightened and quickly said, "It turned out that it was Hall Master Yu who arrived. This little girl doesn't know, but she's disrespectful. I hope Master Yu will forgive me." Hearing that, Du Kich couldn't help but be stunned, not understanding why she suddenly became so polite and polite. Immediately afterwards, Lai Hong asked seriously, "May I ask what business Master Yu has come here for?" Du Kich is not an ordinary person. With just a glance around, he guessed her intention, then smiled and said, "Lai Nu Heap, I want to ask Nu Heap about someone." Lai Hong didn't wait for him to finish, his face darkened. "The owner of the hall still hasn't answered my question." Du Kich slowly replied, "Did the female hero come here just to hang out? Regardless of whether there is an incident or not, please leave this forest immediately. Otherwise, don't blame Lai Hong for not saying it first." Du Kich laughed coldly. "Very good." The old man also wanted to see where the girl had the courage to dare to be so arrogant in front of him. Today, the old man will just stay here, let's see what you can do for him. In his heart, Lai Hong silently calculated, Du Kich is not an ordinary person. If he were to stay, it would be detrimental to Kim Phi. Wouldn't it be better to take advantage of this moment to destroy him? Thinking so, she snorted coldly and said, "Du Kich, the title Van Sun Phi Fung Nan Fach Han did not come by chance. I hope the head of the Du Hall will consider this carefully." As she finished speaking, the murderous intent on her face was clearly visible. Of course Du Kich knew that nickname was associated with cruel tricks, but he was arrogant in his martial arts skills and had the Thiat Hong gang as support, so he did not believe that Lai Hong would dare to do anything to him. Why smile? Lai Nu Heap is a smart person. Please don't make things difficult for our Thiat Hong gang. Later, who knows? Lai Hong didn't wait for him to finish and shouted loudly, "Don't say any more unnecessary words. Now leave this forest immediately." Du Kich was so angry that he could not contain his anger. He waved his palm and rushed forward, pinpointing Lai Hong's 36 vital points. Lai Hong smiled faintly, using his energy to protect his body. His right hand shot out, the wind pointed straight at Du Kitch's wind palm. Hearing the strange sound of the wind, Du Kitch quickly transformed and withdrew his palm to defend himself. Taking that opportunity, Lai Hong approached. His two palms shot out like a storm. Du Kitch only made a slight mistake and fell into a disadvantageous position. All he could do was try his best to defend. Finally, he mustered up 8 times his strength to counterattack with one palm. Just heard a boom sound, branches and leaves fell like rain, sand and dust were everywhere. Lai Hong's shirt fluttered, his hair was messy, his body wobbled, he had to take a step back. As for Du Kitch, his eyes widened, he staggered back 3 steps, his mouth gaping open, his blood rushing through his body. Lai Hong was determined to eliminate the opponent. Of course he did not show any mercy. As soon as she stood still, she immediately rushed forward, pulled out her sword and stabbed Du Kitch in the head. As soon as Du Kitch tried to block the attack, his blood flowed, his eyes became dizzy. He had to take 3 steps back and take a deep breath to stabilize himself and avoid vomiting blood. Suddenly he saw a flash of silver light in front of his eyes. He calmed down and looked closely, then realized with horror that Lai Hong had drawn his sword. Panicked, he quickly took a few steps back, and at the same time raised his hands and released 2 beams of black light. Wei! Whoa! As soon as Du Kitch's 2 judge pins touched the silver Fach Tai Fong sword, they broke into 4. At that moment, Lai Hong lowered his wrist and pushed the tip of the sword forward. Du Kitch howled in agony, blood spurting out, splattered everywhere. He staggered back 2 steps, his chest was cut in 2 lines more than a meter long, blood flowed like a stream. Lai Hong did not hesitate, took another step forward, and swung his sword strongly. Du Kitch only had time to scream, his chest was torn open, his internal organs spilled out. He forced himself to walk 2 more steps and then collapsed, dying on the spot. Just as Lai Hong turned around to leave, suddenly a figure rushed forward and shouted, "You devil, where are you going to run to?" It turned out that 4 armed men jumped out. They shouted and waved their swords, rushing to surround and attack Lai Hong. She angrily shouted, "Fools who don't know how to fear death, taste my lady's sword." Having finished speaking, she swung her sword to counterattack. These 4 great men are the chief, the deputy chief and 2 powerful subordinates of the Lu Duong subcamp of Thiat Hong Bang. Their martial arts skills are not low. They followed Du Kitch into the forest to search. As soon as they heard the movement, they ran over. Just in time to see Du Kitch being killed, they immediately angrily rushed up to attack. Normally, they would not dare to touch Lai Hong, but at this time, because they were so angry and saw the hall master die miserably, they forgot all about the danger and rushed forward with all their lives. By the time the wind came and the sword light flashed, they suddenly woke up and wanted to retreat, but it was too late. After a few clinking sounds, followed by pitiful screams, fresh blood sprayed out like rain. Lai Hong immediately retreated 8 meters away to avoid splashing blood on his body. Suddenly, a faint laugh rang out from behind. Lai Hong was startled and turned around, horrified to realize that under an ancient tree there was a handsome young man standing silently looking at him. That person is none other than Kim Fai. She softened her voice and asked softly, "Mr. Deng, has the wound healed yet?" Kim Fai scanned the battlefield and coldly replied, "Why? Miss, do you still want to take another hit?" Lai Hong was famous for being a murderous woman with an arrogant and cruel personality. She had never gently asked a man about her, not to mention Kim Fai was an enemy appointed by her master. But the feelings were strange. She was fascinated by his style and spirit, willingly pledged to resent the Thiat Hong gang, killing the enemy just to eliminate Kim Fai's misfortune. Who would have thought Kim Fai would treat her so coldly? Lai Hong was so angry that he almost burst into tears, then snorted and asked, "Dang Kim Fai, do you know who these people are?" Kim Fai calmly replied, "Don't say such unnecessary things. I don't need to know who they are, just that, the palm you gave me today, sooner or later I will return it." Hearing that, Lai Hong was in extreme pain, rushed forward to slap him, and shouted with a trembling voice, You are so unscrupulous. Kim Fai quickly took 5 steps back and arrogantly said, My martial arts skills are not yet perfect. I know I cannot compete with you. But if you still insist on taking my sword and rights, we can fight again. If I die, then you can take everything. The slap missed, and hearing those words again made Lai Hong's heart hurt even more. She turned away, tears welling up in her eyes, and said angrily, Okay, dang Kim Fai, we will meet again. As she finished speaking, her body turned into a red cloud, soared into the air, rushed straight into the deep forest, and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Kim Fai looked at her shadow, sighed softly, and muttered, I didn't expect such a beautiful young woman to be a ruthless murderer. Just as Kim Fai was about to leave, suddenly a hoarse, cold voice shouted from behind, Kid, stop so I can ask you something. He was startled and secretly frightened. This person's light attack was truly profound. He was close behind me and I still didn't know it. Thinking that, Kim Fai quickly turned around. At that time it was already dark. Not far from him was a man in a yellow shirt, middle-aged, with arms long above his knees, short body, only about 4 meters tall, thin and small, standing straight with an unusually arrogant look. Kim Fai glanced at the other person and asked coldly, Sir, please stop. What do you want to ask? The man in yellow shirt calmly asked, Is this kid dang Kim Fai? Being called a brat, Kim Fai was angry in his heart and coldly snorted, Yes, this one is dang Kim Fai. And who are you guys? That person suddenly looked up and laughed. The old man is Black Tui Nathan Sat Tan Kai, the master of Bak Ho Hall of Thiat Hong Gang. Ha ha. The old man thought Kim Hut Command Master was a character with 3 heads and 6 arms, but who would have thought that he was just a brat who had not yet dried off the smell of milk like that? Having finished speaking, he clapped his hands. Immediately, 2 old men about 60 years old jumped out and stood respectfully behind. Tan Kai turned to the tall, thin old man standing on the left and said coldly, La Patrol, catch this kid for me. Listening to his tone, it was clear that he did not bother to take action himself. La Patrol bowed and replied, Obey the hall master's orders. Having finished speaking, he strode forward and shouted at Kim Fai, Kid, if you know how to stay still, let the old man tie you up. At this point, Kim Fai was truly frightened, silently thinking, Black Tui Nat Sat Tan Kai is a notorious gangster who unexpectedly joined the Thiat Hong Gang. It seems that the Thiat Hong Gang's experts are extremely numerous, and I'm afraid my revenge will not be easy. Thinking of that, La Patrol shouted loudly. Kim Fai's face immediately darkened and he coldly asked, Are you all good men of the Thiat Hong Gang? La Patrol replied in a low voice, Listen carefully, kid, this day next year will be your first death anniversary. Having finished speaking, he laughed loudly, raised his palms, crossed his arms, and aimed straight at Sword Pilot's head. The attack of 2 palms at the same time, but dangerous interference, is truly difficult to defend. The more Kim Fai looked, the more frightened he became, thinking to himself, Just one patrol under Tan Kai's command is so powerful, I'm afraid Tan Kai's skills are even more profound. Not daring to delay, he turned around to counterattack, and as soon as he took action, he performed the master technique, Long Fong Song Tuet Chut. The 2 sides had just fought a few rounds, and the dust and sand on the ground had rolled up into a cloud. Patrolman LA's real name is La Tan, has a great reputation in the world, nicknamed Kai Sun Chuang. His strength is extremely powerful. He and former Attorney General Hong Chin Duong followed Tan Kai from the time he was still roaming the banks of the Blackwater River. Later, when Tan Kai was invited by Thiat Hong Gang to join the group, holding the position of chairman of Duong Tam Duong, and also the leader of Bak Ho Duong, La Tan and Hong Chin Duong became his left and right patrols. At first, La Tan thought that dealing with a young teenager would only take a few strokes. Who would have thought that as soon as they fought, they realized that the opponent was not an ordinary person, and the more they fought, the more frightened he became. Kim Fai's body style is as fast as the wind, his palm power is powerful, and his moves are exquisite. Even Kai Sun Chuang, who has been running around for decades, is secretly creepy. The more the two fought, the faster they fought. In the blink of an eye, they fought more than dozens of rounds. Suddenly, a whoosh was heard in the battle. Both sides jumped back and away. I saw La Tam clutching her chest with her left hand, her body staggering back a few steps, her mouth continuously spitting out fresh blood. Hong Chen Duong, standing next to Tan Kai, saw that scene and shouted softly, intending to rush to the rescue. Tan Kai snorted and said coldly, "Hong patrols, take La Patrol aside first." Having finished speaking, he took 2 steps forward, arrogantly observed Kim Fai for a moment and then smiled faintly. "Kid, I didn't expect you to have some martial arts skills." Kim Fai smiled arrogantly. "If you don't have some ability, how dare you come to Thiat Hong Gang?" Having finished speaking, he silently used Long Feng's energy to protect himself, in case of any unforeseen circumstances. Tan Kai's face darkened, his voice cold. "Little guy. Today, this old man will definitely not disappoint you." He raised his dry and thin arms, flexed his muscles, and the atmosphere around him immediately became tense. Just when the momentum collided, it was like an explosion rang out. Although his mouth was harsh, Kim Fai knew that he could not compete with Tan Kai, so he did not dare to be careless, his eyes staring intently at the other person. Tan Kai sighed, seeing with his own eyes that La Tam was seriously injured, did not dare to underestimate him, his eyes were still fixed on Kim Fai. The two stood facing each other, silently arguing. The surrounding was so quiet that you could hear a pin drop. Suddenly, Tan Kai shouted loudly, "Kid, give your life here." As soon as he finished speaking, he rushed forward and unleashed 12 consecutive attacks. Kim Fai smiled faintly, raised his palm to block, and at the same time counterattacked as fast as lightning, immediately striking out 8 palms, followed by 6 kicks. In just a moment, both sides did their best. Kim Fai performed Long Feng Song Tuet Chuang, occasionally mixed with Long Feng's strong energy and incomplete but incredibly powerful and unpredictable punch. Tan Kai did not hold back, unleashing all his martial arts quintessence and performing the 12 Lo Trak Tin Master that made him famous. The technique is both fast and strong, sometimes hard and sometimes soft, changing unpredictably, making it extremely difficult for the opponent to defend. The two fought for more than 100 rounds. Gradually Tan Kai gained the upper hand. Suddenly, Kim Fai let out a long howl. Before the screams ended, his body jumped up more than 3 feet high. With his left hand, he pulled out the divine sword Kim Huk, and immediately a stream of golden light lit up, like the rising sun in the east. Tan Kai also flew along, looking like a big crane, rushing straight in front of Kim Fai. In his hand, a pair of purple Mother Lin Hon Luyen appeared at the same time. This training pair consists of 17 rounds, 8 large rounds are called Mother, 9 small rounds are called Death. The connecting rings stretch and stretch arbitrarily, each vibrating ring emits a strange sound, enough to cause the opponent's mind to become mentally disturbed. Kim Fai took out his sword and immediately performed the Golden Dragon Dao Meng Tien Tien Sword Dharma, the new sword technique he had mastered in 8 forms. In the first position, Golden Dragon first ascended, only saw a golden light shoot out, mixed with a thunderous sound, like a golden dragon pouncing straight towards Tan Kai. Tan Kai snorted coldly, swung purple Mother Lin Hon Luyen to block, only to hear clang ringing repeatedly. As soon as the sound ended, the training thread suddenly extended, hitting Kim Fai's legs straight. The match immediately became much more intense. In just a moment, both sides fought dozens of rounds. In the arena, the sword light in the training circle lasted for a long time, the wind whistled whoosh, the training circle buzzed, making the listener's brain ache, temporarily making it difficult to determine victory or defeat. Suddenly there was a loud shout. A figure with a blue light like a falcon rushed forward. That was a 7-meter-tall Taoist monk, holding a Burmese knife in his hand, aiming straight at Kim Fai to slash down. Kim Fai immediately used the most powerful advantages of Kim Long's fate-stealing fantasy Tian Kim Dharma to defend himself. His aura was fiery, his power was amazing. However, Tan Kai's two strands of purple mother Lin Hon Luyan were experienced and dangerous, combined with Hong Chen Duong's sharp Burmese sword. The two coordinated to surround Kim Fai. At that moment, Hong Chen Duong swung his knife and slashed him across the back. Kim Fai immediately turned his sword, causing the sword to turn into several golden beams like falling stars, stabbing straight into the opponent's stomach. Hong Chen Duong quickly swung his knife, transforming into 5 red and blue flowers to block. Who would have thought that Kim Fai's sword stance contained 14 changes? As soon as the Burmese sword touched, golden light suddenly exploded, radiating brilliantly like burning fireworks. Hong Chen Duong did not expect the opponent's sword position to be so powerful. Just as he was about to withdraw his hand and retreat, it was too late. Sure enough, he only heard a whoosh sound, fresh blood splashed like blood rain, and his left arm followed suit. Kim Fai defeated an opponent, his body slowed down in the blink of an eye. Chin Kai couldn't bear to miss the opportunity, immediately took advantage of the Purple Mother's Tai Hon Luyan, and rushed from behind to attack. Kim Fai was frightened, quickly raised his sword to block, and at the same time lowered his body, gliding to the right to avoid. But Tan Kai was not willing to let him easily defend, so he turned around and made the two ropes pull straight like two iron staffs, swinging down from left and right sides. Kim Fai was only half a beat slow, so he had to devote all his strength to defense and had no time to counterattack. Reluctantly, he used all his strength to dodge while transmitting Long Feng's energy to the limit into the divine sword. Immediately, the sword light shot much longer, accompanied by a whooshing sound of cutting the wind. Seeing that, Tan Kai smiled strangely. "Kid, quickly surrender your life. Quickly submit your life." Before he finished speaking, Kim Fai felt the opponent's weapons pressing in from all 4 directions. He panicked and immediately deployed the full force of Van Fong Vu Guard. Only heard a few kung kung sounds, followed by a pitiful howl of huh, then cluck repeatedly. Tan Kai's Purple Mother Lin Hon Luyan was cut into many pieces by the divine sword, shot in all directions, and fell into the deep forest. However, Kim Fai's back was also hit by a very heavy blow. His hand still clutched the divine sword, his eyes widened and he stood still, blood pouring out from his mouth, nose, and ears like a stream. His face turned from red to pale, his eyes gradually dimmed, and finally his body slowly collapsed to the ground. Tan Kai looked stunned until Kim Fai fell completely before laughing strangely. What a tough guy, but in the end he couldn't escape Tan Kai's hand. Having finished speaking, he slowly walked to Kim Fai's side. Chapter 8. White Bone Divine Monarch. Tan Kai approached Kim Fai, bent down to observe for a moment, saw that his chest was still heaving, then smiled and thought to himself, if we don't eliminate this person immediately, sooner or later it will become a big disaster. After thinking about it, he immediately raised Purple Mao Lin Hon Luyan, aimed straight at Kim Fai's stomach and stabbed down. The distance between the two was too close. Tan Kai's attack was both fast and strong. If he was hit, Kim Fai would die right on the spot. At that critical moment, from the forest suddenly blew a strange wind, emitting a sharp whoosh sound. The fierce wind made Tan Kai unable to stand still. He staggered back 2 steps, causing the weapon in his hand to shift to the side and crash into the ground with a pop sound. Tan Kai smiled faintly and shouted loudly, "Who is there? Why did you act so secretly?" Just hearing a swoosh sound, suddenly a golden light rushed out from the forest, crashing into the ground right in front of Black Tui Not Saturday. Tan Kai calmed down and looked closely, only to realize that it was a yellow command flag, with 2 crossed bones embroidered in the middle of the flag. As soon as he saw that thing, Tan Kai's face immediately changed. He quickly headed towards the forest, clasped his hands, bowed, and said with a trembling voice, "Senior, Tan Kai has committed an offense. I hope the Divine Monarch will be generous and forgive him." Having finished speaking, he turned around, grabbed two patrolmen named Hong and Law who were lying on the ground with both hands, then ran away. In the forest slowly appeared a thin figure, wearing light yellow clothes. This person's body was unusually tall, nearly 1 meter tall, his face was dark, and his eyes were deep but bright. He walked up to Kim Fai, bent down to look, a look of surprise flashed, and thought to himself, "The world is vast, I didn't expect there to be such a talent. Ha, ha, it really suits this old man." At that time, Kim Fai was seriously injured, barely breathing, and his life hung on a thread. Then Quan frowned slightly, reached into his pocket, took out a light yellow medicinal pill, stuffed it into Kim Fai's mouth, then quickly applied it to a few vital points to stop the bleeding. After that, the old man carried him to a deserted place and laid him down. Then Quan sat cross-legged, both hands pressed against Kim Fai's acupuncture point. Streams of hot internal force slowly transmitted from his palm to his body. An hour later, then Quan withdrew his palm and stood up. His yellow face was drenched in sweat. He immediately tapped several vital acupuncture points to relieve Kim Fai's acupuncture points. Kim Fai sighed, then opened his eyes and slowly stood up. He was startled to see a stranger next to him, his appearance both cruel and ugly. However, Kim Fai clearly understood that this person had saved him from death, so he bowed his head, clasped his hands in greeting, and respectfully said, "Thank you to the benefactor who saved me from the accident. I will never forget this kindness for the rest of my life." Then Quan smiled widely, waved his hand and replied, "No need for much ceremony. Kid, what's your name?" "Underdang Kim Fai." "May I ask your name, noble senior?" Then Quan let out an O sound, looked intently at Kim Fai for a long time, then nodded and praised, "Great! Great! Dang Kim Fai, are you willing to be my disciple?" Kim Fai was extremely surprised when he heard that. He didn't know how to answer. If you accept, it will be like betraying your master. If he refused, the opponent would look so ferocious, while he was seriously injured. Just a light blow would be enough to lose his life. While he was still wondering, then Quan's face darkened and he asked in a low voice, "Kid, do you have anything awkward?" Kim Fai quickly bowed his head and said, "The seniors have not yet told the juniors their names." Then Quan smiled coldly and replied, "No need to worry about that. This old man is Bak Kat Then Quan. As his subordinate, it is not enough to dishonor your name." Having finished speaking, he laughed out loud. As soon as he heard the 4 words Bak Kat Then Quan, Kim Fai's expression immediately changed and he was secretly frightened. "I didn't expect this devil to appear here. Bak Kat Then Quan has been famous in the world for decades, has a strange personality, is unpredictable in joy and anger, and is famous for his cruel actions. On the streets, anyone who encounters him will find it difficult to avoid disaster." Since his childhood in Phi Long Mountain Village, Kim Fai had heard the name of this fierce god, so now that the other person claimed it, he couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. However, he still tried to tactfully refuse. Bak Kat Then Quan's reputation is famous in the world. Juniors have long heard of it. It's just a pity that Junior knows that his blessings are thin. I'm afraid he's not worthy of being a subordinate of the divine monarch. Bak Kat Then Quan raised his eyebrows and asked in surprise, "Kid, if there's anything difficult, just say it straight. No matter how difficult the task is, this old man will stand up to face it for you." Kim Fai was in an even more awkward position, but had no choice but to answer, so he slowly said, "The junior relied on God's grace to save his life, but now he is taught by God, so he does not dare to refuse. But the junior has been raised and taught martial arts by his teacher since childhood, so is it possible that he will now betray his teacher to become a subordinate of Then Quan? Therefore, I just want to note that kindness in my heart." His words were gentle and clear, making it impossible for listeners to refute him. Bak Kat Then Quan looked angry and coldly asked, "So you don't want to be this old man's subordinate?" Kim Fai respectfully replied, "It's not that juniors don't want to, it's that they can't." Then Quan smiled coldly, "The old man saved you from death, but he can also destroy you on the spot." Kim Fai calmly replied, "If the senior wants to take the junior's life, even if the senior dies, he will not hold grudges. Seeing him courageous and not afraid of life or death, Bak-Kat and Quan secretly admired him. He pondered for a moment, then said, "It's been 10 years since the old man took a single step down the mountain, and his anger has cooled down a lot. If it were the past, I'm afraid it would be difficult for you to leave here alive." Kim Phi was silent, just gawking at Then Quan. A moment later, Then Quan said again, "Perhaps the old man was unlucky and just came down the mountain to meet you. If he doesn't kill, the old man will not feel secure, but if he kills, it will be a pity. Tell me, how should the old man handle it?" Kim Phi secretly smiled. "I don't understand why in front of that unblinking murderer there is now some sympathy." Bak-Kat and Quan thought for a moment, then suddenly raised his head and smiled. "The old man came up with a great way, but, speaking of this," he chuckled, "we became friends for life, don't you see?" Kim Phi was startled when he heard that and quickly replied, "This, Junior, wouldn't dare." Bak-Kat and Quan's face darkened and he said in a deep voice, "Don't you want to be friends with this old man?" Kim Phi quickly took a step forward and respectfully said, "The junior really wants to make friends with the senior, but I'm afraid that in the martial arts world, position is highly valued and juniors don't dare to climb high." Bak-Kat and Quan was extremely happy when he heard that. His taciturn face suddenly twitched continuously, looking even more ferocious, but that was a sign of his extreme joy. The muscles on his face kept vibrating, his deep eyes suddenly sparkled with gentleness. He laughed loudly and said, "It's okay, it's okay." The old man hated rituals and customs. "Ha, ha, from now on you just call me Big Brother, because I'm older than you." Having finished speaking, he did not wait for Kim Phi to respond, then raised his hand and waved towards the forest. After a snapping sound, a tree branch the size of a finger flew out and gently fell into his hand. Bak-Kat and Quan broke the tree branch into 3 pieces and said coldly, "Well, take these 3 branches as incense, bow to heaven and earth, and swear an oath of friendship." Even though his face showed excitement, his voice was still cold and without any emotion. Having finished speaking, he stuck 3 branches into the ground, put the energy into his fingertips, pointed down, and the 3 branches immediately burned like 3 sticks of incense. Kim Phi saw this and couldn't help but feel scared. At this moment, he truly understood how profound the Divine Monarch's internal force was. With just a little effort, he was able to guide Sam Moy true fire in his body, burning tree branches from a distance of more than 6 meters. Bak-Kat and Quan took Kim Phi's hand, bowed his head and worshipped, softly reading, "Hung Tien Sat and Dang Kim Phi, from today onwards, vow to live and die together. When faced with danger, they will come to the rescue. If you break your oath, heaven and earth will destroy you." Seeing that he was so sincere, Kim Phi could not refuse, so he immediately imitated the oath and bowed. Bak-Kat and Quan Hung Tien Sat calmly looked at Kim Phi for a moment, smiled and said, "Dear little brother Kim Phi, Big Brother has been lonely all his life, but he never expected that when he was old, he would be sworn in with a younger brother as talented as you, which really made Big Brother extremely happy." Hearing his sworn brother praising his great talent, Kim Phi couldn't help but burst out laughing, then laughed and replied, "Having a senior brother like Big Brother and younger brother is truly an honor." Bak-Kat and Quan suddenly remembered something and quickly asked, "Why did Tan Kai just poison his brother, so determined to kill you?" Kim Phi was startled, his expression turned serious. "The younger brother and he have an unfathomable hatred." "What feud?" "My brother's entire family was killed by them. If I don't repay this hatred, I swear I won't be human." Bak-Kat and Quan laughed shrilly a few times and then coldly said, "The enemy of a good brother is the enemy of a big brother. Thiat Hong Bang, then you will know how powerful this old man is." Having finished speaking, he turned to Kim Phi. "Kim Phi, let me teach you a few great techniques of Bak-Kat sect." Kim Phi was surprised. "So, how can that be?" "Why not? I pass it on to you, in good faith." He and brother looked carefully. "This is the style of Hong Nan Bak-Kat." Having finished speaking, He immediately taught the Bak-Kat Tuet Min 3 assassins, explaining it very thoroughly. This style of martial arts includes 3 styles: Bak-Kat Hong Nan, Ko-Kat Tan Sun, Kat Tan Then Tu. Each position contains countless dangerous moves, position after position, consciousness after consciousness, magical transformations, completely different from ordinary martial arts. Kim Fai carefully observed and memorized each move, unable to help but admire. He compared this form with his Long Fong Song Tuet Chut, seeing that each style had its own unique magic, but in terms of power, Long Fong Song Tuet Chuet was still one level lower than Bak-Kat Tuet Min Tam Assassin. After performing the 3 postures, Bak-Kat Then Quan withdrew his palm, stood still and asked, How much have you learned about Big Brother's games? Kim Fai smiled and clasped his hands in gratitude. The big brother's great skill is amazing. The younger brother is extremely respectful. Please let me reenact it. Hope Big Brother can give me advice. He was inherently smarter than others, and had received detailed instructions from Bak-Kat Then Quan, so as soon as he finished watching it, he remembered it completely. When practicing again, each move are precise, without a single mistake. Bak-Kat Then Quan saw this and was overjoyed, laughing loudly and saying, Very good. Very good. Little brother Kim Fai is really smart. Having a younger brother like him makes Big Brother very satisfied. By the time Kim Fai had mastered all 3 postures, the sky had just dawned. Bak-Kat Then Quan emotionally continued, Big Brother still has some work to do. After finishing the job, Big Brother will go down to the south to help his gentle brother. Even though he was excited, his face remained cold as before. Having said that, he reached into his pocket and took out a small 3-cornered flag and gave it to Kim Fai. This is the token that the Big Brother used when practicing the martial arts in the past. You should carry it with you, only when you have to use it. That year, the Big Brother had a grudge against some extremely powerful people. If he displayed this flag too early, he would bring disaster. But once the good brother has emerged, no matter how powerful someone sees him, he must respect him and not dare to pursue him to the end. Kim Fai, who valued love and affection, saw God's sincere treatment, and couldn't help but be moved to tears, softly saying, Big Brother is on his way, please take care of your body. Having finished speaking, he reached out his hand to receive Bak-Kat's order. Bak-Kat Then Quan has never shed a tear in his entire life, so he doesn't understand why today is so emotional. Hearing Kim Fai's words, the corners of his eyes suddenly became wet. He quickly turned away, and said in a low voice, Kim Fai brother, the world is dangerous and unpredictable, you must be very careful. Well, goodbye, I'll see you again someday. Having finished speaking, he flew away, his figure disappearing into the darkness in just a blink of an eye. But Kim Fai still had time to see his brother's tears before he left. A feeling of attachment arose in Kim Fai's heart, as if she had just lost something extremely precious. He sighed softly, not expecting a famous star-slaying devil like Bak-Kat Then Quan to have such a kind heart. For a moment, he stood still, not knowing whether to be happy or sad. Thinking endlessly until the sunlight shone down, Kim Fai was startled like someone who had just woken up from a dream. He raised his head, quickly walked into the forest, and saw the horse from the previous day still waiting in the same place. He immediately threw himself on the horse's back and rode away. Since then, Kim Fai's life has taken a new turn. He followed the Mandarin's path straight forward, and did not enter Lu Duong Citadel until noon. Along the way, passers-by were in a hurry, occasionally encountering martial artists carrying luggage. On this official road, it is not unusual to meet people who are walking and singing with their swords. But today the situation is completely different. Everyone in the martial arts group was in a hurry. Although there were quite a few teenagers, the elders still made up the majority. Each person has a strong body, steady steps, and looks like they are all experts. When entering the city, vehicles and horses passing by were more crowded than usual. Kim Fai has a white shirt, white horse, and handsome demeanor, attracting attention wherever he goes. As soon as he arrived in front of a small shop, the waiter standing at the door quickly bowed and greeted him, inviting him to stay. Having been tired and hungry all night before, but because he was curious to know why so many powerful people gathered here, King Fai, as soon as he got off his horse, did not rush into the shop, but just stood quietly and observed. The agile man, seeing that he was a wealthy guest, ran over and smiled and said, "Invite guests to come inside and sit down." Having finished speaking, he reached out to hold the horse's reins. King Fai advised, "Feed it fresh grass and good rice. We will reward you later." The common man smiled widely and replied, "That is the duty of a petty man. Please just come into the shop." King Fai went upstairs, chose a table to sit down, ordered the waiter to bring some dishes, and then quietly ate, occasionally glancing at the surrounding tables. The restaurant is quite large. Upstairs alone there are more than 10 tables. Except for King Fai's table, every table was crowded. Most of them are people from the gang, but I don't see anyone who really stands out. Only the table by the window was notable, an old man with white hair and beard, rosy face, chubby body, wearing a short blue shirt, and an old beggar. The old man in the blue shirt sat half asleep as if he was meditating, occasionally taking a few sips of wine. The old beggar seemed to be drunk, his head resting on the table, fast asleep. Although his snores were not loud, they were clearly heard and reached everyone's ears. In the restaurant, the noise of people never stopped. 2 middle-aged martial artists sitting at the table next to King Fai were whispering. Even though they spoke very softly, their words still did not escape his ears. One person spoke up, "Old Vong, I'm afraid there's something interesting to watch tonight. Would you like to attend?" The other person smiled faintly and replied, "Ha, the older Mr. True gets, the more confused he becomes. I came here just to watch the excitement, but I didn't dare to dream of stealing heavenly mascots." "Why say that?" "The mascot chooses its owner. Who knows, maybe that 1,000-year-old racer horse will fall into your hands. But to be honest, even if you want to eat, you may not be able to eat it." "Okay, stop joking. If that Ganoderma horse really gets into my mouth, I will bite half of it and save it for you." Old Vong, wanting to eat that formed spirit horse is not an easy task. Of course, even if I had it in my hands, I'm afraid I wouldn't be able to enjoy it. "Is that true?" "Of course. Just eating it is difficult. If there is no person with profound internal skills, practicing on one armor, to help neutralize the medicinal power, even if swallowed, it will not be digested." "What else is difficult?" "Lead drugs are also extremely rare." "Oh, do you still need medication?" "Of course." "Do you think eating is like eating meat and cakes?" "Old Vong, we've known each other for a long time. If there's any other hard-to-find medicine, why don't you tell me?" "It's useless to tell you, because even if you search, you won't find it. Just tell me, so this ignorant person can open his eyes." "Okay, it's okay to say it. If you want to eat Ganoderma lucidum, you need 2 types of medicine." "What 2 drugs? 1,000-year snow lotus or 1,000-year ginseng?" "My goodness. Where to go to find those 2 things?" "Huh. Those 2 things are hard to find, but there is still hope. As for Lin Chi horse, it is true that it is difficult to meet once in 10,000 years." "Old Vong, so what effect does the Lin Chi horse have that makes it so valuable?" "Even those who have been in seclusion for a long time have to come out and compete. Its effectiveness can be said this way to make it easier to understand. Suppose my strength and yours were equal, but if you were to swallow the Lingji horse, even if our master tried to attack, you would hit him with a single blow and shoot him 7 or 8 feet away." "Really?" "Old Vong, let's try to take a look tonight. It's okay to look at it, but don't be foolish enough to compete for it, otherwise you'll be in danger of destroying yourself." "Of course." "Well, let's go back to the room to rest first." Having finished speaking, the 2 of them stood up and went inside. Hearing those words, King Fai suddenly understood and thought, no wonder there are so many martial artists gathered here. It turns out they're all aiming at the 1,000-year-old Lingji horse. Tonight I'll have to go see how they compete. Curiosity arose. He was in no hurry to leave, ordered more wine and food, and leisurely sat down to drink. As the sky gradually darkened, Keem Phi looked out the window and saw in front of him a series of high mountains, engulfed in mysterious darkness. As evening approaches, the number of customers entering the restaurant becomes more and more crowded. The chubby old man in the blue shirt still bowed his head, occasionally taking a few sips of wine, picking up a piece or two of meat and chewing slowly. The old beggar snored louder and louder, still lying on the table sleeping soundly as before. Keem Phi raised his head and drank the entire cup of wine. His cheeks were red, as if he had drunk too much. It was completely dark. He stood up. The officer quickly ran over and respectfully asked, "Is there a guest house?" Keem Phi nodded. "Do you have a spacious, clean room?" "Dear sir, our brothel's room is famous for being the cleanest and most spacious in the city." Having finished speaking, he led Keem Phi inside. Indeed, the room was clean and spacious as advertised. Keem Phi was drunk and told the pawnbroker, "If you don't call, don't come in. Yes, if you have any instructions, please speak up." After saying that, he bowed his head, retreated and conveniently closed the door. Outside, there was the annoying muttering of the general's voice. "It's so unlucky. These days everyone tells me if you don't call, don't come in." Yet I was not rewarded with a penny. Hearing the sound of footsteps going away, Keem Phi immediately bolted the door and sat on the bed to control his energy. Time passed quickly. Soon all around became quiet. The moon reached its peak. As soon as the drum struck the first watch, from afar he heard the footsteps of a night walker. Keem Phi immediately guessed that it was the two guests who had chatted at noon, and couldn't help but secretly criticize their light work for being too low. He quickly turned down the light, opened the window slightly, and jumped onto the roof. Lying on the tiled roof, he looked forward and saw two figures walking straight towards the inner city. Keem Phi smiled and immediately deployed light attack to follow. Compared to him, the martial arts of those two people were completely different. Seeing that they were running too slowly, Keem Phi was annoyed and immediately ran forward to block the road. The two of them were walking quietly. When they suddenly saw a white shadow looming ahead, they were startled and stopped. Looking up, they realized it was a young man in a white shirt with a handsome appearance. Even though they were scared, they still tried to stay calm and shouted softly, "My friend, why are you blocking our way so late at night?" Keem Phi bowed his head and replied, "I have something I would like to ask you both for advice on." "What? May I ask, where does the eternal Ganoderma usually appear?" "This." "I hope you guys can answer quickly." The two people's faces changed simultaneously. The Vom man took a step back, clasped his hands in ceremony, and cautiously asked, "Please let me know the title first." "Dang Keem Phi." As soon as they heard that name, both of them were startled and scared, shouting in unison, "Master Kim Huck." Keem Phi smiled and replied gently, "I'm just asking for directions. It doesn't mean anything. Why are you two so scared?" The man named Vom quickly said respectfully, "Rumor has it that the perpetual Lin Chi horse often appears near the abyss next to Dot Min Nai, under the highest mountain of the Tien Sun range. I only know this much, but I'm not sure about the truth." As soon as he finished speaking, the white shadow in front of him flashed, turning into a thin stream of smoke that flew straight towards Tien Sun. From afar, a voice of thanks could be heard. The two looked at each other bewilderedly, shook their heads and stuck out their tongues for a long time, then continued on their way, hoping to witness with their own eyes the scene of everyone fighting for the Lin Chi horse. Keem Phi used the Long Van Dun technique, his body as light as smoke, rushing straight into Tien Sun. Soon he went deep into the mountain, stopped to observe for a moment and then headed straight towards the highest mountain. High mountains reaching up to the sky, majestic mountains, endless cliffs. Even though he had pushed to the limit, he was still exhausted and sweating profusely before reaching the top. Standing on the top of the mountain, Keem Phi hesitated, not knowing where Dot Min Nai was located. Resting for a moment, he jumped onto the branch of a tall old tree and looked to the left. As soon as he looked, his heart clenched, startled in horror. About half a mile away, a mountain ridge appeared, its flat top as if it had been cut off at head height. Below the mountainside, mist floats lazily, the scenery is so beautiful and captivating. However, on the cut summit, there were crowds of people, at least more than 100 people gathered. Kim Phi silently thought, with those many people on Dong Min Nai, there must be quite a few top experts, and there are also people hiding in the shadows who haven't shown up yet. As soon as that thought ended, another speculation arose in his mind. There must have been countless martial arts masters waiting in ambush around this Dong Min Nai. They either waited to steal Lin Chi horse for 10,000 years, or were wary of someone else making the first move. It seems like a bloody battle is unavoidable tonight. Kim Phi pondered and pondered, hesitant about whether to go there or not. If being rich brings disaster to yourself, it's not worth it, but after all the effort to come here, if I don't see it with my own eyes, I won't be willing. At that moment, from the nearby mountains suddenly came the sound of wind blowing, the skirt of his shirt fluttering. The sound approached the tree where he was standing and suddenly fell silent. Kim Phi lowered his head and looked down, only to realize that it was a dark shadow with an extremely fast body, like an eagle, flying up the tree. He immediately hid behind dense foliage to avoid being discovered by the enemy. Chapter 9. On winning fate chewing. That person approached. Kim Phi immediately recognized him as the fat man in the blue shirt he had met at noon. It seemed that the old man did not know that he was hiding among the dense branches and leaves. When climbing up the tree branch, the old man looked at Dong Min chewing, snorted huh and muttered, "I didn't expect the rats to come in such large numbers." Having finished speaking, he raised his head and looked up at the sky. At this time, the moon had reached the top of the head, clear moonlight shining down. Suddenly, the old man's face changed and he exclaimed in horror, "As soon as the moon sets in the west, the Lin Chi horse will certainly appear." Before he could finish speaking, his body rushed like an arrow, instantly reaching the top of the left ridge. Waiting for him to go far, Kim Phi then used the long Van Dun technique to silently follow. The more he chased, the more frightened he became. That old man's movements were incredibly fast. In just a moment, Kim Phi had completely lost track of his opponent. As he continued to chase, he silently thought about his background. I heard that the 1,000-year-old Lin Chi horse only appears under Dong Min. So why do we have to follow this old man? Thinking so, he immediately stopped walking and turned straight down to Chu. Kim Phi's purpose in coming here was not to compete for the Lin Chi horse to increase his own power, but just out of curiosity, wanting to see with his own eyes that rare 10,000-year-old treasure. Even so, he did not deny that if he had that mascot, his martial arts skills would increase and be strong enough to fight against the Thiat Hong gang to avenge his father. Although the desire for revenge is always burning, Kim Phi still does not want to steal the elixir, but only wants to practice profound martial arts and defeat the enemy righteously. The moon gradually tilts to the west. Every month, on the night of the full moon, when the moon is about to set, that small, adorable Lin Chi horse appears on the ground to absorb the essence of the sun and moon. That rare opportunity caused the news to quickly spread throughout the world, attracting countless martial artists. Although there were many people who came to watch, there were quite a few who had the ambition to capture the Lin Chi horse, causing the number of experts gathered here to reach hundreds of people. No one knows exactly where the Lin Chi horse will appear, so everyone can only hide around this area to wait. On Dong Min Nai, many martial artists gathered, and below, in the forest next to the lake, there were also many people quietly hiding. The lake water is blue, sometimes a gentle breeze passes by, creating small ripples. Under the moonlight, the water's surface sparkled like fish scales, and the scenery was mesmerizing. Hundreds of experts' eyes constantly looked in all directions. Kim Phi breathed a sigh of relief, then walked closer to the lake shore. His ears, which were very sharp, had long sensed that there were hundreds of people lying in ambush around here. Suddenly under the moonlight on the shore of the lake, a faint white shadow appeared on the ground, as light as smoke. The shadow gradually gathered, turning into a small horse as white as snow, less than a meter long, only a few inches high, and extremely pretty in shape. Under the moonlight, it looks even more pure and lovely. The people around them all held their breath, the air became heavy. The eternal Lingji horse that everyone has been waiting for so long has finally appeared. Hundreds of eyes were fixed intently on that little horse. Suddenly the white horse raised its head, lightly stomped its feet, its eyes shot out two streams of bright red light. It looked horizontally and vertically once, then raised its head to the sky, preparing to absorb the essence of the moonlight. Poor that little creature, he didn't know that there were hundreds of masters lurking around him, wanting to capture and kill him. All around was silent, no one dared to make the first move. Everyone understands that if you don't catch it right away, the horse will disappear, and the next time you want to find it, it will be even more difficult than going to the moon. The jade white horse slowly raised its head and exhaled a white breath. At first the breath was only more than a meter long, then gradually lengthened, still vibrating slightly, stretching as if it had a premonition. That is the essence of the sun and moon that it has cultivated for nearly 10,000 years, thanks to which it has turned into a pure being, able to run and transform. If you want to make an arrest, now is the best time. Once it absorbs all that white vapor into its body, it will immediately apparate, and then it will be even more difficult to capture it. Seeing such a beautiful and adorable little horse, Kim Fai couldn't help but feel sorry for him. But he also understood that his love could not save it, he only hoped that it would escape in time. While he was still mourning, suddenly from behind a large rock, a stream of black smoke as fast as electricity rushed out, rushing straight towards the horse. That person's body technique was so great that Kim Fai could only see a faint wisp of black smoke. He couldn't help but make a soft hum sound. The horse immediately sensed danger and quickly opened its mouth to suck hard. The white vapor was immediately swallowed by it. But it's too late. Under the moonlight, Kim Fai clearly saw the man's thin body, wearing a black shirt, pale face, stiff arms and legs. His eyes were turned white, his hair was silver, he looked extremely scary. As soon as he grabbed the horse, he turned and rushed straight into the forest. As soon as he turned his back, a green shadow jumped out in front of him and shouted loudly, "Black Cloth Tima, quickly leave that thing behind." Just hearing a bang sound, Kim Fai saw the blue-shirted old man he was following earlier crash into Black White Tima. They both fell to the ground, standing facing each other. Black Clothes Tima widened her white eyes, burst into shrill, high-pitched laughter, then coldly said, "Chi Koi Tai. You don't have peace in Lin Nam to do business, so why do you come here looking for a way to die?" Listening to the two people's response, Kim Fai couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. He did not expect that both of them were famous gangsters, who had been in hiding for many years, and would now appear here at the same time. At that moment, dozens more people appeared, surrounding Hack White Tima and Chi Koi Tai. Chi Koi Tai laughed loudly and replied, "People are afraid of you, Black Cloth Tima, but this Lin Nam Thuangan only sees that item as worth buying. If you agree, we can just bargain." Black Clothes Tima glanced around at the group of heroes, then said coldly, "Chi Koi Tai, if you don't give way, you won't survive." Before he finished speaking, Lin Nam Thuangan laughed loudly and interrupted, "Well said, well said." As soon as he finished speaking, Thuangan used his right palm to hit Black Cloth Tima straight in the chest, and at the same time, his left hand grabbed the white horse in his opponent's hand. Chi Koi Tai's movements and body techniques were unpredictably fast, causing Black Clothed Tima to be frightened. He quickly took a step back to avoid it, then raised his left palm to counterattack. From his hand a stream of white smoke shot out, welcoming the opponent's palm wind. Bang! The forces of both sides collided, creating an explosion like thunder. Both were shaken back one step at a time. At that moment, a strange burst of laughter suddenly rang out, accompanied by a cold voice interjecting, "What a useless thing." As soon as the sound ended, a black shadow as fast as lightning rushed from outside into the battle circle. Suddenly, Tima and Thuangan shouted loudly at the same time, jumped up, and at the same time attacked the person who had just appeared. The heroes now saw clearly. The person who rushed in was an old beggar, his clothes were ragged, his gray hair was as messy as a crow's nest. In his right hand, he snatched the 1,000-year-old Lin Chi horse. Seeing this, more than 10 experts immediately surrounded him, not letting him escape. The old beggar let out a strange laugh, only slightly bouncing his feet. His body glided more than 10 meters away, rushing towards the hidden Kim Fai. However, the group of experts quickly chased after him and continued to surround him. Black Cloth Tma glared at the old beggar and shouted loudly, "Tien Nam Q Chi Kai, will you quickly return the treasure to this old man?" It turned out that the old beggar was Tien Nam Q Chi Kai, a famous martial arts expert in the past. Tien Nam Q Chi Kai smiled softly and replied in a strange voice, "Ha ha, well said. Is there anything of yours that this old beggar doesn't know about?" Lin Nam Thuong and Chi Koi Tai laughed shrilly and took 2 steps forward. His round face still remained gentle. He smiled and said, "That old beggar. I'm a businessman, and now I really like the toy my friend is holding in my hand." As he spoke, he took 2 more steps. Q Chi Kai immediately took a step back and shouted, "Chi Koi Tai, don't do that in front of the old man." It turns out that whenever luck strikes, Chi Koi Tai always maintains a gentle smile. The more you laugh, the more vicious your attack becomes. Hearing Q Chi Kai shout, Chi Koi Tai became even more gentle, took 2 more steps, smiled and said, "Come here, come here. We've been old friends for many years, so it's okay to do this business together." Black Cloth Tma saw that the 2 people seemed to be pushing him aside, and his fierceness immediately erupted. He rushed forward and shouted loudly at Tien Nam Q Chi Kai, "That old beggar. If you're smart, quickly hand over what you just stole." Q Chi Kai suddenly widened her eyes and her voice lowered. "Black White Tma, you must clearly recognize who I am before speaking. Are you not afraid of losing your life? Those 3 people are all strange guests, famous ghosts from a local town, with profound and unpredictable martial arts. If we really fight, we still don't know which cat will bite which cat." The heroes standing outside had also silently prepared, just waiting for the opportunity to rush in and attack. In the crowd of people surrounding were the evil Mao Sun, Tai Han Nat Hu, that Bo Fong Hao, the 3 sisters Dao Sun, Dong Han Ge Kui. All of them were ferocious demons with high martial arts skills. There are also main sect masters such as Tao Thuong Phai, Ba Zhang Tam Kit, Diem Thuong Tam Kim, Namai That Tuan, Tan Tan Tu Hu, On Tien Thuong, Siu Lin Fu. All are famous figures in the world. However, compared to the 3 people of Lin Nam Thuongan, he is still 1 level behind. Outside were hundreds of other experts surrounding the outer ring. Knowing that their strength was not enough, they only stood and watched from afar, not daring to recklessly fight for it. The 2 sides were struggling when suddenly 3 middle-aged people, neatly dressed, appeared from outside and quickly walked over. Behind them were 10 powerful men escorting them. As soon as they saw this group of people, the experts in the outer circle immediately started talking, and someone said softly, "The Iron Hong Gang's master is here." The leader was tall, had a rosy face, smooth skin, eyes emitting 2 streams of purple light, beard and hair as red as fire, and a majestic aura. He is Pai on Tuan Tam Sun Mac Dike, the leader of Nguai Tam Duong of Thiat Hong Gang. The person walking on his left had a gloomy face, hawk eyes, a hooked nose like a parrot's beak, a tall, thin body, pale skin, and shiny head. He is the demon slayer Tien Tun Saturday. The person walking to the right of Mac Dike is Black Tui Nat Sat Tan Kai. 3 people boldly entered the center of the arena, standing tall in the middle of the siege. Ghost Han Ta Tien burst out laughing, stepped forward, clasped his hands in greeting to the 3 people in front, then raised his voice and said, "The 3 seniors are so happy. Not at home enjoying happiness, but coming here to joke around like this?" Perhaps his status was still a bit lower than the other 3 people's, which is why he was so polite. But everyone in the gang knows that this person is one of the 10 great masters of the Thiat Hong Gang, characters who rarely appear at the same time and act at the same time like that. Kim Fai hid behind an ancient tree. When he saw those people appear, he was startled. Unable to hold back, he let out a light laugh, then threw himself out, aiming straight at Tan Kai's head. It happened so suddenly that Tan Kai only had time to raise his palm to defend and at the same time hastily retreated back. At the same time, Qu Chi Kai jumped up and tried to rush into the forest to escape. Black Cloth Tima and Chi Koi Tai immediately rushed forward with their palms, preventing the old beggar from escaping. Tun Sat's eyes flashed fiercely, seeing Qu Chi Kai struggling to fend off the other two. He tilted his head and whispered to Mac Dyke, "Master Mac, if you don't act now, how long will you wait?" Mac Dyke already had such an idea. After hearing it, he jumped forward. Both palms simultaneously hit Qu Chi Kai. The attack was as fierce as a storm. Tun Sat burst into laughter and immediately rushed into the battle. Bang! An earth-shattering explosion rang out, followed by a horrifying scream. Sand and dust flew everywhere, silhouettes of people scattered everywhere. Qu Chi Kai's eyes rolled back, her face turned pale, she lay on her back, lying on the ground, her mouth constantly spitting out fresh blood. Hak Wai Ti Ma, Chi Koi Tai and Mac Dyke all staggered back in quick succession. Tun Sat was also pushed back more than 3 meters before he could barely stand. In his hands, the 1,000-year-old Lin Chi horse was snatched away. As soon as he stabilized his body, Tun Sat immediately threw himself up and tried to run away, when suddenly someone shouted loudly, "Chase!" Dong Han Gukui shouted loudly while waving his palms to pursue Tun Saturday. Other people also rushed forward at the same time, some brandishing swords, some dancing swords, chasing after them. Black Cloth Tima also shouted loudly and immediately rushed after him. At that moment, everyone heard a series of loud clicking sounds like French sounds hitting each other. It turned out that Chi Koi Tai had pulled out his famous weapon, the iron abacus. Seeing the dire situation, Mac Dyke panicked, quickly raised his hand to signal his subordinates, and shouted loudly, "Attack!" As soon as Tyon Tuan Tam's son's shout ended, dozens of silhouettes immediately rushed into the battle circle. 10 masters of the Thiat Hong gang rushed forward at the same time, holding iron whips in their hands. The whip's shadow swung out thickly like a shiny net, facing down directly at the group of heroes besieging Tun Saturday. The battle became fierce to the extreme. In a corner of the arena, 2 figures were fighting fiercely, Kim Phi and Tan Kai. Tan Kai's strength was originally higher than Kim Phi's, but at this time his comrade's situation was extremely unfavorable. As he fought, he continuously glanced at the chaotic battle on the other side, but saw Kim Phi desperately making moves, with a strange body style and vicious stance, causing Tan Kai to only step back repeatedly. Suddenly there was a terrible cry. Tai Han Not Hu was hit heavily, his body was thrown out, falling to the ground with a pop sound. He only struggled a few times and then died. Immediately afterwards, fresh blood splashed and painful screams rang out endlessly. There are more and more injured and dead people. Tun Sat was surrounded by a group of heroes and was forced to use Tien Poison Ghost Hand, a technique he had never used for a long time. Even so, his hair was beaten until it was messy, his clothes were torn, and blood spurted from his body like rain. Mac Dyke's fists were as fast as the wind, his attacks were fierce and unfathomable, but he still could not avoid being injured. His body was covered with large and small scars. 10 of his subordinates died and more than half were injured. In the arena, almost no one was left intact, but everyone still fought with their lives, and no one retreated. Although the Thiat Hong gang's people had captured the Lin Chi horse, they were completely surrounded and had no way to escape. Tan Kai couldn't help but be frightened when he saw this, but he was covered by the shadow of an insect. Suddenly, he let out a scream, leaned back, and kicked Kim Phi in the stomach with all his strength. But halfway through, he suddenly regained his stance, immediately stood up straight, and focused all his strength to attack Kim Phi. Bang! Kim Phi quickly raised his hand to defend, but the blood and energy in his body swirled violently. His body was shaken back 3 steps, his mouth spit out a mouthful of blood. Thanks to the attack just now, Tan Kai escaped Kim Phi's siege. He immediately turned around, pulled out his strangely shaped short sword, and rushed forward to attack the black-clothed corpse. Bang! After the deafening explosion, Black Cloth Tima let out a terrible scream. His whole body was covered in blood, then turned into a stream of black smoke and rushed away. Tan Kai's face turned pale. He staggered back 10 steps, panting for a long time before standing firmly. Kim Fai had just had time to regulate his breathing. Seeing this, he shouted loudly, brandishing his golden sword and rushing straight to attack Tan Kai. The golden light from the blade just flared up. The fighting heroes immediately stirred. Someone cried loudly, "Kim Hug Divine Sword!" Just now, Tan Kai used all his strength to seriously injure Black Cloth Tima, but he himself was also seriously injured and was standing there recovering. Suddenly he saw a dazzling golden sword light, like thousands of snakes rushing down from the sky. Extremely frightened, Tan Kai shouted loudly, mustered the remaining strength, and used 2 short swords to counterattack Kim Fai. Oh my! As soon as the terrible scream ended, fresh blood splattered. Tan Kai's right thigh was severed, his body was thrown several feet out, he struggled a few times and then died immediately. At the wound, blood flowed like a stream. Kim Fai was already injured, and with rising anger, he used all his strength to execute the third sword stance Tien John Kim Tui and Kim Long's fate-stealing fantasy Tien Kim Dharma, attacking straight towards Tan Kai. Who would have thought that at that moment, Tan Kai risked his life and threw both short swords at him. Kim Fai could only dodge the right bar, but the left bar could not avoid it in time, hitting him in the shoulder. The bone-shattering pain came, fresh blood poured out, dyeing the white shirt red. At the same time, Kim Fai felt a strange aura spread quickly throughout his body at the wound. The left arm immediately became weak, almost paralyzed. He was frightened, quickly sheathed the Kim Hug Divine Sword, raised his right hand to press 5 weak points on his left shoulder to prevent the spread of toxic gas. Just as he was about to pull out his sword, suddenly a pitiful cry rang out in the arena, followed by the sound of Chi Koi Tai's iron abacus colliding like firecrackers. Then I heard him forcefully laugh and say, "The old man temporarily recorded this debt first." As he finished speaking, his body glided several feet away. Kim Fai saw this and suddenly shivered, thinking, could it be that the people of the Thiat Hong gang have completely won? Thinking of that, he quickly looked around, only to see several purple figures rushing towards him, aiming straight at him and attacking. Chapter 10. The Eternal Horse. He was startled, shouted loudly, raised his right palm to block 7 of the opponent's palms. Fortunately, with some remaining internal strength, he still managed to repel that attack. Immediately after that, there were popping sounds, then a loud boom sound. A figure was knocked back, his steps staggered as if he was about to fall. It turned out to be Kim Fai. His face was pale, sweat poured down like rain, and his clothes were torn to shreds by the wind. Kim Fai retreated more than 10 steps, his mouth spewing out a jet of blood like an arrow, then fell to the ground, his whole body motionless. Although the battle had been fierce for a long time and his true strength had been lost a lot, Mac Din's strength was still so strong that Kim Fai could not withstand it and was seriously injured to that extent. After repelling Kim Fai, Mac Din immediately approached Tan Kai, quickly pointed at a few vital points to stop the bleeding, then helped him up and massaged his blood. The battle ended. Dead bodies lay scattered, blood flowing into streams. The heroes standing outside also gradually dispersed. Tun Sat's whole body was covered in blood, each drop continued to drip. His hand tightly held the Lin Chi horse. The white horse's body was now covered in blood, but its eyes still shone with spiritual light. The Thiat Hong gang has won a great victory. Amidst the dissatisfied whispers of the heroes, everyone understood clearly, although the Thiat Hong gang only had 2 people left who could act, no one dared to be confident that they could defeat Tun Sat and Mac Din. Tun Sat slowly turned his head, his face was as fierce as a devil's, he smiled and slowly walked towards Kim Fai. No one knows what he plans to do. The heroes had already left. Seeing this, they all stopped and looked at Tun Sat at the same time. The air suddenly became heavy to the point of suffocation. Tun Sat suddenly stopped walking and bowed his head to look at Kim Fai. At that time, Kim Fai was unconscious, completely unaware. It seemed that Tun Sat was looking at his handsome face, as if he was looking for something. Suddenly, he showed surprise, his body shook as if he had been bitten by a poisonous snake, and he quickly took a step back. A moment later, his face returned to normal. He stepped forward again, bent down, and used his fingers to point at 3 vital points on King Fai's chest. The force split into 3 faint wisps of black smoke, difficult for anyone to see clearly, then in an instant it disappeared without a trace. I saw King Fai's pale face suddenly grimace violently, as if he couldn't stand the pain. He let out a soft sound, feeling pain that penetrated his bones, like thousands of ants crawling all over his body, biting and tearing every inch of skin. Even though he was unconscious, he was still forced to wake up by that intense pain. Sweat poured out like rain, my hands and feet trembled nonstop. The short knife was still stuck deep in his left shoulder. The cold air from the blade began to spread throughout his body. The pain increased more and more. King Fai kept moaning, then slowly opened his blurred eyes. Suddenly, the moaning stopped. 2 angry rays of light shot out of his eyes. He realized that the person standing in front of him was Tun Sat, protector of the Thiat Hong gang, and also his sworn enemy. King Fai was naturally arrogant and would rather die in pain than show weakness before the enemy. He wanted to open his mouth to speak, but the pain choked his words in his throat. Tun Sat smiled faintly and coldly asked, "Kid, are you King Fai?" His whole body hurt like a knife. King Fai still tried to stand up with his hands and knees, and mustered all his strength to answer one word, "Yes." His eyes shot out an angry look like 2 poisonous snakes, wishing he could tear Tun Sat apart on the spot. If looks could kill, he would have fallen apart long ago. Tun Sat suddenly raised his face to the sky and laughed shrilly like a ghost crying, sending chills down the spine of those who heard him. After laughing, he coldly asked, "Kid, is your real surname Dang or is your surname Dang fake?" King Fai's eyes widened, his anger rising, as if sitting in a cauldron of boiling oil. He roared, "Really?" Tun Sat smiled faintly and said, "Kid, you don't have any strength left anymore." 2 streams of tears fell silently from King Fai's eyes. Humiliated in front of his enemies and with heroes standing by to witness, at this moment he just wanted to die. But in his heart he still gritted his teeth and said to himself, "You still have your father's great revenge yet to repay." The master's revenge has not been settled yet. We still don't know who our parents are, so how could they die in such a vain way? Thinking of that, King Fai sighed softly, slowly bowed his head, tears still falling continuously. With trembling limbs and heavy steps, he quietly left. The heroes stood from afar watching. Everyone sighed in sympathy, because they understood clearly, in this world, no one has ever been able to withstand Tun Sat's soul-scavenging ghost hand. While Sword Fillet stepped into the forest, the heroes stood there watching, sighing and admiring, when Tun Sat suddenly raised his face to the sky and burst out laughing strangely. Before the laughter ended, he raised his hand and flicked it. Immediately a light stream of smoke rushed straight into the vital point behind King Fai's back. The heroes simultaneously fell silent. That silence was not resignation, but anger at Tun Sat's despicable and cruel tactics, but no one dared to speak up. King Fai only saw a weak point on his back that suddenly felt numb, his whole body itchy and uncomfortable, even more painful than countless ants gnawing at his bones. He let out a soft sound and then fell to the ground. His hands were clenched, his teeth were grinding together, his lips were pressed tightly, and fresh blood dripped down. He rolled around for a while without moaning a word. A moment later, King Fai forced himself to stand up, glanced at Tun Sat, then staggered further into the forest. Tun Sat suddenly shouted loudly, "Kid, stand still." As soon as the shouting ended, another shout rang out behind a rock, "Back Bao Thuan Quan Bao." The scream spread quickly everywhere, the murderous aura around seemed to suddenly overflow. As soon as the words ended, 4 old men wearing red robes appeared before everyone's eyes. That sudden change frightened the heroes, because no one expected that the 4 old mandarins were also present. Immediately after that, behind the large rock appeared 8 middle-aged men. Their martial arts uniforms were as red as fire, each holding a large lightning hammer. Their status is only inferior to General Manager Thuan Quan Bao. Their martial arts are high, not inferior to Tun Sat or Mac Din. As soon as he saw the 4 old men appear, Tun Sat's face immediately changed. In that situation, he could not run away, so he risked his life and raised his left hand to signal. Who would have thought that this was not an order to attack Thuan Quan Bao, but instead he followed Kim Phi with another attack. Just hearing a boom sound, Kim Phi cried huh. His body was blown away like a ball, rolling on the ground. The dagger stuck in his left shoulder was stabbed deeper into the bone, and fresh blood gushed out from his mouth like a stream. But no one dared to step forward to help. Kim Phi could only endure the pain, lying quietly on the ground, silently burning with the will to take revenge. After finishing the attack, Tun Sat turned back to face the 4 elders and the big men of Thuan Quan Bao. Mac Din also stood still in place, silently pouring enough power into his palms, ready to respond, in case the 4 elders suddenly attacked. The 4 elders slowly looked around. The leader, Loi Hoa, burst into laughter, then took a step forward and asked Tun Sat and Mac Din, "So, are you still strong and healthy?" Tun Sat smiled coldly and replied briefly, "Thank you, your guild master is still peaceful as usual." Elder Loi Hoa glanced at the Lin Chi horse in Tun Sat's hand, smiled and continued, "Brother Sun came really early." Tun Sat laughed a few times and replied, "You guys are late." Elder Loi Hoa shook his head and slowly said, "The old man felt that he had come at the right time, it could not be called late." Hearing that, Tun Sat was startled, his face changed, he suddenly took a step back. "What do you mean by that?" As soon as the question ended, everyone present fell silent. The atmosphere immediately became as heavy and tense as before, making everyone find it difficult to breathe. Suddenly, a loud shout rang out from the forest, "Nam Tun Black Sat Page." The voice was melodious but carried far away, the sound contained cold murderous intent. In just a blink of an eye, 3 people from Nam Tun Hak Sat Page appeared on the lake shore. When everyone looked closely, they saw that all 3 were old men with white hair, fierce faces, and elegant-looking green brocade clothes. Immediately afterwards, 6 middle-aged men appeared in the forest, holding serrated swords and blue martial arts uniforms, stepping out one after another, looking majestic. Suddenly someone softly exclaimed, "Black Sat Tam Ma." As soon as Black Sat San Ma appeared, Tun Sat and Mac Din nodded slightly in greeting. The 3 old men immediately clasped their hands and bowed to the 4 elders. The 4 old men also clasped their hands in response. Phai Tien Ma Yu, the leader of Tam Ma, smiled and asked 2 elder, "Are the 4 of you also here?" It really surprised me. Elder Loi Hoa laughed and replied, "The old man did not expect that the 3 of them would come despite the thousands of miles away. Although Nam Trang and Bac Bao have only appeared on the streets for more than 10 years, their power has grown incredibly fast. Both have become a great gang that is not inferior to any sect in martial arts. Each side guards a direction, the south is in the south, the north is in the north, the experts are as numerous as clouds, almost leading the clans in their area. South side is Black Sat site, north side is Thuan Quan site. On weekdays, the 2 sides still interact and have quite close relations, but when they encounter great benefits, no one is willing to yield to the other. Tun Sat is not a stupid person. Faced with that situation, he clearly understood that he was at a disadvantage. If they run away in front of the heroes, I'm afraid the Thiat Hong gang won't have any face left in the martial arts world. Furthermore, he knew clearly that any of the Black Sat 3 demons or Thuan Quan 4 elders had martial arts superior to him. Moreover, he had just gone through a fierce battle and his limbs were tired and exhausted. But Mac Din is not a confused person. He understood that if he did not take this opportunity to defeat his opponent, the consequences would be unpredictable. As for Tan Kai, he had to temporarily leave him lying there. Even though the wound was very serious, several major acupuncture points were placed so the bleeding stopped. At this time, Tan Kai was already in a deep sleep, mixed in with the pile of bodies. If he didn't look closely, it would be hard for anyone to know he was still alive. Thinking of that, Mac Din glanced at Tun Saturday. Unexpectedly, Tun Sat also had the same thought. With just one look at each other, both of them understood clearly. At that moment, Mac Din rushed out from the fog, swung his palm straight at old Loi Hoa. His attack was as fierce as a hurricane. Tun Sat did not delay, immediately waved his palm to attack. In fact, as soon as the two of them signaled to each other, Mr. Tam of the Black Sat San Ma saw clearly, but he only smirked slightly, looking pleased. Elder Loi Hoa stood near Mac Din and Tun Sat, his back turned to them. As soon as Mac Din took action, the force of his palm crashed straight into his back. Although the attacks of Mac Din and Tun Sat are extremely powerful, old Loi Hoa is not ordinary. As soon as he heard the sound of the wind tearing through the air, he immediately turned around, raised his palms to block, and at the same time retreated quickly. Even so, he was still forced back 2 steps by his 2 opponents. Taking that opportunity, Mac Din and Tun Sat immediately jumped out of the fighting circle. In the row of 4 elders, Elder Loi Hoa, Elder Fong Hoa and Elder Van Vu shouted at the same time and quickly chased after them. Knowing that today it was difficult to avoid a death battle, Mac Din and Tun Sat immediately turned around to meet the enemy and did not continue to run away. Seeing this, the boss of Hak Sat San Ma immediately gave a signal to his 2 younger brothers. All 3 rushed in to join forces to attack, determined to steal the treasure. Knowing he couldn't escape, Tun Sat had to stand back and fight off the terrifying masters. His right hand still held the Lin Chi horse tightly, only using his left hand to fight. In the demon's palm wind, he could still feel the faint, foul-smelling smoke. During the night of intense fighting, his internal strength was severely depleted, his limbs were weak, and his opponents were all highly skilled martial artists. So the more he fought, the more dangerous he became. Suddenly, pale blue light flashed from the eyes. Knowing the danger was coming, Tun Sat quickly raised his palm to defend, and at the same time used his strength to retreat quickly. His palm force collided with Tam Ma's palm wind, only to hear a loud boom sound. Tun Sat howled miserably, his body staggered back a few steps, fresh blood immediately spewed out from his mouth. The Lin Chi horse in his hand was also knocked away and thrown far away. At the same time, Tyon Tran Tam's son also let out a whoop sound, his face turned pale, and he continuously backed away. Right at that moment, a figure as fast as electricity soared into the air, rushing to catch the floating Lin Chi horse. Elder Loi Hoa and Elder Van Vu immediately jumped up and simultaneously hit the man with blue eyes who had just attacked. That person quickly raised his palms to block. After a heavy bang, all 3 fell to the ground. The Lin Chi horse had been held by Tun Sat for a long time. Although it was now free from his hands, it was no longer as agile as before and seemed to have died. When it fell, it landed right on Kim Phai's face, who was lying on the ground, half conscious, his face contorted in pain. At that moment, Kim Phai was in so much pain that he was sweating profusely like lake water. Suddenly, he felt his eyes soften, a pure scent rushed straight into his nose, spreading to his mind. In an instant, his spirit was much more alert, and the pain also subsided significantly. At the same time, Kim Phai suddenly felt a stream of energy coming from somewhere, causing him to immediately stand up. Although my body still hurts, it is much more comfortable than before. As soon as he turned around, he grabbed Lin Chi horse, quickly looked around, and saw silhouettes of people surrounding him, especially 3 people with blue eyes rushing forward as fast as lightning, directly attacking him. Before the person could get close, the strength and wind of the palm had already rushed down. The attack was so powerful that Kim Phai was so scared that he didn't have time to think, quickly threw himself back, then ran straight into the deep forest. The people behind chased after him as fast as lightning, shouting loudly as they chased, "Kid, if you stand still, your death will be spared, otherwise don't try to escape." At that time, Kim Phai was still in a semi-conscious state. Even though his hand was tightly holding the Lin Chi horse, his nose could still smell the gentle scent, but the wound in his body was filled with intense pain. The more scared he became, the more he ran away, using all his strength to cast Dragon Cloud Release, his body like smoke rushing deep into the mountains and forests. Behind, the four old mandarins and Hak Sat Tam Ma were moving as fast as arrows, following closely and not letting go. Gradually, Kim Phi left Dot Min Nai far away. The mountain road became steeper and steeper, and he also ran into the wild mountains and forests. In the forest, the screams of owls and howling gibbons resounded mournfully, coldly, and horrifyingly. At that time, the drum struck the fourth watch. People running and chasing through wild forests and mountains have traveled more than 40 miles. In front of Kim Phi appeared an indescribably desolate mountain valley. Under the cold moonlight, the deeper you go, the more terrifying the scene inside becomes. Surrounded by jagged rocks, under the dim moonlight, they looked like countless ghosts crowded together. Through that long, narrow mountain valley is a path of reeds growing above shoulder height, everywhere blooming green ghost flowers. Just a glance will send chills down one's spine. Being cornered, Kim Phi had to run away from the enemy and enter this place. The fear in her heart gradually disappeared and she could only head deeper inside. However, anyone who steps into that valley, no matter how high their martial arts skills, will find it difficult to survive, and no one has ever understood why those people cannot get out. Exactly on the night of the full moon, again at the fourth watch, like many times before, from the mountain valley suddenly came the terrifying howl of a wolf. Kim Phi ran for his life here. Even though he was half asleep, he still couldn't help but shudder in horror at that sound. The four elders and Tam Ma tried their best to pursue, hoping to block Kim Phi from rushing into the valley. But he gritted his teeth, pursed his lips, and headed straight into that valley, never looking back. Seeing that, two elder and Tam Ma looked at each other and sighed, then turned and retreated in frustration. Because they all understood that their strength was still not enough to penetrate Lang Hukak, they had to grit their teeth and give up. Deep into the valley, Kim Phi felt intense pain all over his body, and he was shaking nonstop. Finally, he staggered a few steps and then collapsed to the ground, unconscious. His right hand was still clutching the dead Lin Chi horse, unintentionally placing it close to his mouth. The strange scent from there entered his nose, causing him to gradually wake up. Through a watch drum, the sun began to rise, and the howling sound of the wolf had quietly disappeared. Kim Phi groaned softly and struggled to get up. He realized that the wounds in his body had eased somewhat, so he immediately looked around. In front of us is a jagged stone road. Both sides are full of mud. Light pink smoke rises from the surface of the mud, and occasionally there are bubbles of water bubbling up and making a splashing sound. Besides those sounds, all around was eerily quiet. The silence had a faint smell of death. Turning his head to look back, Kim Phi saw that the entrance of the valley was obscured by thick fog. Thinking for a moment, he understood that no matter how he turned back, it was the way to die. If he risked his life and went deep inside, maybe he could still find a way out. Little did he know that the place he was going to be was Lang Hukak, the land of Luan Han, a land that for more than 100 years, just mentioning it made people's faces change in fear. If she knew this was such a terrible place, Kim Phi would absolutely not dare to venture in. But because he was completely unaware, he kept following that rough stone path, slowly stepping deeper inside. The path became increasingly narrow and his steps became heavier. His left shoulder was completely paralyzed by the deformed short sword until the hilt. Kim Phi kept walking slowly, stumbling straight into the heart of the gloomy mountain valley. After walking a few dozen feet, he suddenly felt dizzy, his eyes lit up like fireflies flying around, and his body felt heavy. He quickly took the lingji and brought it to his nose to smell it. Sure enough, after just a moment, he felt better. Looking around, he saw a layer of pale pink mist still covering all sides. On both sides of the road were muddy puddles with a strong fishy smell, going straight to his nose, making him feel nauseous and want to vomit. Suddenly, at the end of the road a tall mountain ridge appeared. That mountainside looked just like a giant, ferocious wolf, with its mouth wide open, 2 rows of jagged teeth, and the path he was walking on led straight into its mouth. He was happy and excitedly walked forward. But because the injury was too severe, even though he tried to use all his internal energy, his speed was still slow. Gradually, he stood in front of the wolf's mouth. From inside, a bone-chilling wind blew out, causing him to shiver and chill down his spine. He raised his head and looked at the majestic cliff. The wolf's head is actually a giant rock. Hesitating for a moment, he still walked straight in. From the teeth to the wolf's throat is a narrow path, then from the throat leading deep inside is a tunnel. The tunnel walls are built of smooth, red stone. In the tunnel, a hazy, dreamlike red mist continuously emitted, mixed with a faint scent. The deeper he went, the steeper and more slippery the tunnel became. He walked and sniffed Lingji to stay awake. After walking for a while, the front suddenly lit up. He came to a great hall. Inside, the jewels emitted bright rays of light. He entered and saw that all 4 walls were encrusted with 5-colored gems and the light was dazzling. Suddenly he slipped and almost fell backwards. He lowered his head and looked down, immediately startled, his heart pounding, and cold sweat broke out. On the ground, human bones lay scattered. He thought in horror, where is this place? Why are there so many human bones? In fact, the number of bones he saw was only more than 10 sets, but each of them was a character who had made people's faces change with just one stomp, so they had enough strength to hold out and come here. As for those with less ability, as soon as they set foot in the valley, they inhaled the blood-damp poison palm, fell to death on the spot, or slipped and fell into the mud and died without a trace. Kim Fai calmed himself down, quietly walked over the piles of bones, and continued deep inside. Suddenly from somewhere not far away came a hoarse, weak voice. "Little girl, how did you get in here?" In the middle of such a dark and scary place, a voice suddenly rang out. How could he not be startled? Kim Fai quickly took precautions and raised his head to look towards the source of the sound. Looking closely, he saw a skinny old man with a small body, long beard reaching his chest, messy hair, sitting cross-legged, wearing a dark blue shirt. His face was indescribably gloomy. Eyebrows and beard are messy, gray, without any shine, looking like they have been exposed to hundreds of years of dead air. However, his eyes were unusually bright, shining with an unpredictable look. Kim Fai calmed down, clasped his hands and replied. The junior, named Kim Fai, was chased by the enemy. In a panic, he fell into this mountain valley. I hope the senior will forgive him. The little old man sighed softly, then asked in an old, weak voice, Little girl, do you know where this is? Kim Fai was stunned and replied, Junior doesn't know. The old man sighed again and slowly said, This is Lang Hukak, the land of Luan Sol. Kim Fai was startled when he heard that and quickly asked, Is it true? The old man sadly replied, Really? So the senior is. Kim Fai secretly guessed that this old man must be Cockmaster. Unexpectedly, the old man bowed his head, sighed and said, Ha, this old man has been trapped in this valley for 39 years. Saying that, he sighed again. Before Kim Fai could ask, the old man spoke first. Little guy, how did you get into this place? Seniors mean, how do juniors get here? Huh. It's not like the old man didn't know you were coming in. He only asked why you were able to get in without being killed by that poisonous gas. Kim Fai asked in surprise, What is toxic miasma? The pink mist rising above the muddy surface was the vampire poison mist, also the only poisonous gas that covered both sides of the path. The junior did not know. The old man looked at Kim Fai for a long time, then suddenly asked, What are you holding in your hand? Lingji horse of 10,000 years. Hearing that, the old man's face suddenly changed and he sighed softly. If you had come 10 years early, not only would the old man still have the day to return to the world, but you would also enjoy many benefits. Kim Fai looked at him bewilderedly, not understanding what he meant. The old man softened his voice. Little boy, come here. Kim Fai obeyed and walked closer, only to realize that the old man was barely alive, his breathing was fragile. He reached out, took out the small gourd from behind his back, and continued asking, "Do you know who the old man is?" Junior doesn't know. The old man is Van Dak then Passenger Thuan Vu Koan, head of the Bok Dak sect. After hearing this, Kim Phi was startled and his face changed. In the past, Thuan Vu Koan was famous in the world. Any expert who encountered him would almost not be saved. However, in his entire life he never harmed an innocent person. Although his personality was strange, he did not do anything cruel, so he was respected by the martial arts world. 39 years ago, in the competition for the throne of Lord of Heaven's Orders, he only lost one move to 5 Bo that Sol Phuong Tien Tran of the Black Dao, carrying his hatred into Lang Hu Valley. Since then, the Wanderers have not seen him appear again. Unexpectedly, 39 years later, Kim Phi would meet him in this very place. While he was thinking, the passenger god spoke weakly, "Boy, the old man is about to die. After the old man passes away, if you are lucky enough to get out of here, the old man wants to ask you to do something for him." Kim Phi quickly replied, "Please give me advice, senior." The passenger god sighed and muttered. The old man also knew that he might not have escaped, but in any case, he was still alive and brought with him the 10,000-year-old Lin Chi horse. Having said that, he took out a Black Heaven Command talisman from his body and gave it to Kim Phi. "This is the order of the Grand Master of Bok Dak Mon. Please bring this order back to their Grand Master." Kim Phi respectfully accepted it. Van Dak then Passenger took out 2 delicate boxes, one engraved with flowers, one white box, and gave them to him. The box with flowers is Di Dung Single, the white box is Hon Dung Single. "The old man is about to die, so it's useless to keep it, it's better to give it to you." Kim Phi was surprised. "Senior Thuan Vu, how can this be?" Thuan Vu Koan said in a low voice, "The old man only has a few days left to live, so why keep these things?" Having finished speaking, he held a small gourd, poured into his palm 5 large pills the size of a longan fruit, and said, "This is Tuc Min Soul, the old man's elixir, which can cure hundreds of poisons. Please take 1 pill." Kim Phi was just about to refuse when the old man continued, "Young man, I see that you are heavily poisoned. This spirit pill can only prevent the poison from spreading." Reluctantly, Kim Phi took a pill and swallowed it. As soon as he finished drinking, he continued. He sat down and let the old man help dispel the medicinal power. Kim Phi obeyed and sat down, suddenly feeling the Lin Dai acupuncture point numb. His eyes went dark and then he lost consciousness. Van Dak then Passenger immediately took the 1,000-year-old Lin Chi horse in his hand, his face changing continuously. Finally, he sighed and said to himself, "My internal organs have been fractured, and the strange poison has penetrated to my heart. Even with this 10,000-year Lingji horse, it can only last a few more years. It would be better if I perfected this martial arts talent and let him practice his wandering ways." After speaking, his eyes suddenly lit up. It was that decision that saved Kim Phi from death. Thuan Vu Koan placed his left hand on the Min Mon acupuncture point of Kim Phi, his right hand pressed on the Bok Hoi acupuncture point. 2 streams of hot internal force poured from his palms into his body. A moment later, his sweat poured out like rain, so he had to stop trying to control his breathing. When he opened his eyes, he used 2 fingers to pull out the short sword stuck on Kim Phi's left shoulder to examine it. His face suddenly changed. He thought to himself, could it be that the old devil has appeared again? Why is this kid teasing him? Thinking so, he still sat in the same position, his hands continued to place on Kim Phi's vital points. As time passed, Thuan Vu Koan's face became increasingly pale, his body trembled, and he was drenched in sweat. Finally, he was exhausted, sitting panting for each breath. Kim Phi woke up, only feeling that his whole body was light. As soon as he raised his head, he saw Thuan Vu Koan collapsed and motionless. Kim Phi cried out in panic, "Senior!" He placed his hand on his chest, his heart had stopped beating. Bui felt sad for a long time. Kim Phi lifted Thuan Vu Koan's body and placed it in a stone cavity and covered it. He took the 1,000-year-old Lingji horse and slowly walked deeper inside. Kim Fai used his whole body's true power to protect his body, cautiously moving forward step by step. He did not know who the owner of this cave was, why he hid himself in that strangely shaped mountain, why outsiders were forbidden from entering, and why he also hid countless treasures, making him full of doubts. Carrying that question, Kim Fai continued to step forward, hoping to clarify the mysteries that no one has been able to answer in martial arts for many generations. The tunnel stretches for more than 100 meters. At the end of the road, before his eyes appeared a giant, tightly closed red stone door. On the door were carved a few cold words. The Langhugu belongs to the land of Samsara. The land of Samsara is located in Langhu Valley. Seeing the door but not kneeling down to worship, the soul immediately returns to the land of Samsara. You just finished listening, Volume 2, of the series, Ancient Swordplay. The Divine Palm appears. Please comment your feelings after listening to the story, and don't forget to subscribe to hear the latest stories.